everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show with my friend Brandon, who is back, and I'm stoked for this one. From bootstrapped to 8 figures in 2 years, from literally a goal of 120,000 to an accidental 1.2 million, and literally how you can do it too. Brandon is a ninja. He is one of the founders of Montana Knife Company, has a background in marketing, creative, and is one of the most inspiring, intelligent, hardworking ninjas and humans that I've ever met. And what I love about Brandon is that he holds no punches, which I mean, he tells you exactly how they do this, how they did it, and how it works. And in this episode, if you listen, he breaks down tangibly and tactically exactly how to replicate their success in your business, irregardless. We talk about how to create a movement, leave a legacy, generations, principles of success that allowed them to niche and expand, the value of taking advantage of every opportunity presented without second guessing, how they help their customers take conditional behaviors that they modeled first as a company, micro habits that they use to optimize the company, how they grew through the chaos with the systemization that they made. Like, it is, this one's loaded. We have, and I'm not joking, in front of me right now, I ask Ashley to take notes of these to help me do these intros. And I have paragraphs of notes because there's so much packed into this one. So I would get a pen, get a paper, save the link, repeat, listen. And here's my recommendation. When you hear something that you can execute, that you can apply, go do it, and then come back to the list and choose the next one. So I'm excited about today's episode. I'm going to stop bumping my gums. I'm going to let you get into it. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show, where I don't hit record when I should, but today's guest doesn't need an introduction if you've listened to the show. If you haven't listened to the show, he will get an introduction, but he shouldn't need one because he's kind of like a ninja in his own right that nobody knows exists. He's been the ninja behind the scenes of a lot of things, but this man is incredible. He's somebody that I respect, I admire, I look up to, I consider him a friend. We happen to be neighbors temporarily, but we'll still be neighbors in the same state, and I will drive down. But somebody that happens to everybody I know that I care about tends to know him and has the same thing to say. A man of value, integrity, commitment, care, knowledge, passion, and massive amounts of success that I'm excited to talk about again. Brandon from Montana Knife Company, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I love it. I feel better now knowing that all the stories I was making up about our relationship weren't real. I'm glad we cleared all those up. I was being like a little girl, and I was like, I texted you and you didn't text me back. Are you mad at me? Did I push a line? He's like, no, I just don't text people. I'm like, okay, I'll stop making up that story then.
I used to be the best, and now I'm absolutely the worst. And it's like just an overpowering of messages between like on the MKC side and then like my personal side. And the problem is that I'm focusing so much on the MKC side. My personal side is the one that takes the hit.
I know. And I'm like, it's not because you don't want to, but based on your life in the last 2.5 years, you went from having all the time in the world to now being on a rocket ship and probably not having as much time.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, can we give, because we do have a lot of new listeners, can we give them some context of what Montana Knife Company is, kind of how we get here?
No. So, honestly, the best part about doing this podcast, it's kind of like I get to go look back like a year ago.
I know.
And it's like, hey, dude, like this is kind of working. Like,
I know.
do you want to talk about it? Like,
yeah.
No.
I know. Well, I remember, I loved our conversation. I remember parts of it, and I was like thinking back on it. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
So for anyone who's never heard of Montana Knife Company, we are a 100% USA made knife company based here right outside of Missoula, Montana, in Frenchtown, Montana. It is owned and run by myself and then my business partner, Josh Smith, who is one of the best knife makers in the world living today. He's been making knives for over 30 years and he's only 42 right now. Which is just absolutely insane because he started making knives at the age of 11, became a master bladesmith at the age of 19, and he still holds the record for becoming the youngest master bladesmith in history. I don't think anyone's even really come close to that. Most people become master bladesmiths in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and so on. Montana Knife Company it's simple. He was always trying to make knives for, he was always making custom knives, and they, to make a custom hunting knife for him, it was very expensive. Yeah. So, but but how a knife works and all that stuff, like, you remove the custom parts that make a custom knife expensive, it's still one of the best usable knives possible. So the idea was like, can we make a knife company that has that custom quality, but is affordable for everybody, but it's still good enough that you actually want to start passing it down from generation to generation. So it's not a disposable knife. It's like, it's kind of like just in that in between space between like a really good knife and a custom knife.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting about it as like a consumer, like in the military, I was issued knives, right? And I always thought they were cool. And then I got out and I was like, oh no, I'm no tactical guy, right? Like, and it took me years until I started like playing with weapons again and getting back into the hobbies. But like, I was never a knife guy. I never had a knife on me. It wasn't the thing. I never had one in my pocket to cut something open ever, until I bought one of your knives. And like, just so everybody knows, like, I buy the knives. That's how Brandon and I met. I was like excited that I was like first in line on a drop.
Literally was.
Like, I was like, tell me I was fucking number one. And he's like, you were close. And I was like, "Urgh." And I like planned this whole day out. But I was so excited because my friend Rob had showed me one. And I was like, okay, I got to see the hype. And it's funny, it almost like made me a knife guy, but not a knife guy. Like, I care about the knife. Like, I don't want to get rid of it. Even when I hold it, when I feel it, like, something about it feels different to me. And like, Brandon's in my office, there's 4 of them on the counter over there. You know, I've been gifted one that was somebody's favorite knife, and I told Brandon about it, but I was like, it's like one of the coolest things to me, because every other thing I have, I can name you the brands, I can name you everything. And outside of K-Bar, which I only keep for nostalgia because we put those on everybody's plaques and never used them for anything
exactly
except opening food. I've never really had that, but it's, even when you talk about why you did it and like how you're speaking about it, like, as a consumer who fully supports the brand, as a consumer, like, I feel that way. Like, legitimately, I feel that way. Like, I'm like, oh my God, my son is 6. My daughter already has one, right? She's 18, but my son's 6. I'm like, he's going to have these. Like, that's so cool to think about.
And I absolutely love that. Like, to us, like, that is the greatest message that we want to get across. Because, like, internally we say we don't have any competitors, especially in our space, in our niche, in our industry. We have friends. In the knife world it's so insane. I've never worked in an industry where everyone is actually trying to progress each other, because no one really looks at each other as competitors. Our competitors are people who don't understand a good knife. So, because I guarantee you, like, once you buy a Montana Knife Company knife, you're gonna be like, oh, that half face blades, I want one of their knives. And then once you get a half face, you might go to like a higher level Benchmade or something along those lines. And so the goal is to pretty much convert people and let them understand that knives are worth investing in. They're worth, just they're not disposable, because that was the biggest issue in the early 2000s, early teens, was, all these knife companies came on the scene and they started racing to the bottom of the barrel because they needed, these big buys from big box stores and all this stuff. So, it was, there was replaceable blades and like all this stuff. And like, this is something that, Josh gets super heated about, because, he was literally spent his years trying to make artifacts. Like, he's like, I want to make a knife that's sitting in a museum in 2,000 years. And the rest of the industry is trying to make, a $10 knife for Amazon. So he's like, no, this is where we're stopping. This is where we're going to plant our flag in the ground, and we're going to try to make a knife and make it respectable again. We want people to, take pride in handing down their knives, their watches, and guns. Because when it comes to guys passing down things to, to their sons and grandsons, I mean, no one's going to want their iPhone. No one. Like, I don't want my, my grandfather's, iPhone 9. And that's like that's one of the only things that people carry on them anymore.
It's so funny.
But a pocket knife, you can call it woo woo, whatever. But when someone carries a knife and they're carrying it every day, you feel it.
You do.
It's in the metal. It's in the little nicks. It's how the handle's worn. It's the little divots where they over sharpened, under sharpened, like all that stuff. Like, that's the character of the knife being held by the person who held it before. And there's not a lot of objects that stay on people's bodies through their entire life. And there is something special about receiving that.
Well, for sure. I mean, you think about when somebody's gifted like a beautiful watch, like, it's the imperfections of somebody wearing it and living with it, and the memory and the social trigger of it. And then you're like, God, and then you take so much pride in it. And then, like, it becomes its own story. It really, really is like, when you just said, I don't want my grandfather's iPhone 9, like, bro, that landed. And I like remembered instantly to like, as a kid, I remember like kids growing up where their dads would give them like Swiss Army knives. And it was like the biggest thing ever. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow. And then now as a father, I'm like, wait, I want to give my son something. Like, God, like that's such a, like a powerful reminder of like what really, really matters.
Yeah.
I love that, man.
Yeah, and it's huge, and it's hitting with people, and we're starting to see it, and like we are becoming a big gift company.
Yeah,
And I love that. Like I love like, hey, I just bought 6 for all my employees. Hey,
yeah,
I just bought X for this,
yeah,
and like, hey, I want to buy them all for my groomsmen. Hey, I want to do this, and like that means a lot to us because you can just go to any Cabela's big box store and just go take 6 knives off the shelf
yep.
and give them to them. But I think buying something from us, being American made, being hand finished in Montana, like all that stuff is like, it just gives it a little bit more weight.
Yeah, one of the things you said earlier, which I think is definitely worth repeating, we talked about on the first show, but you said like we don't really have a niche. Like one of the things that I love about you guys, and I would purport if you were to ask my professional opinion and why you're successful, is because you're unapologetically authentic, and that allows consistent alignment like every single day. And like to hear you say like, we don't have competitors, we have collaborators, and we don't apologize for who we are. Like
Right.
I think those tenets are like the foundational principles for why you guys are successful. But can you talk about that for a minute? Because I think it's so powerful to know your identity and stand behind it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that a lot. Kind of going back to, how, trends that were happening, like, us seeing that, some of the other knife companies, racing to the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
trying to make the cheapest knife. But we're also seeing the same wave happen in the hunting space. All these big companies, they're getting purchased by these global entities
Yep.
and like umbrella companies, and then their ethics and stuff are kind of floating down to some of these, larger knife companies in the United States. And, we're seeing complete, massive knife companies that had very big presence in the hunting space completely abandon hunters.
Yep.
Like 100% abandon hunters, not because they don't believe in it, but just because it's too hard to explain to the entire market what hunting is.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're doing is we're just doubling down. We're a hunting knife company first. That's the first thing that we do. We're a hunting knife company. Our knives are meant to be used to processing animals, but then they're also used for every day. And they're also used for, they can be used for self-defense. They can
Yep.
be used for protection, like stuff like that. But the idea is that like we're not shying away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not a pocket knife company that puts an orange handle on one of their models and calls it a hunting knife. Like
Yep.
we designed and I think that's where some of our early accreditation came from, some of our early fame came from, because we designed the knife for the most like hardcore sheep hunter in Alaska who was going on a hunt for 2 weeks and they were only bringing one knife.
Yep.
And the confidence to hand that to someone we know that's spending anywhere upwards towards $50,000 to $100,000 on a sheep hunt.
Yeah.
Like in handing them a tool, being like, this is the only one you need. Your life might be dependent on this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of responsibility that goes along with that. And I don't think a lot of the knife companies really understand that.
No.
And we're talking to, some, these, hunters who've gone on hunts, they brought replaceable blades and they're like, we were two, bush planes away from civilization where I can even go buy another knife. I'm taking a replaceable blade. All the replaceable blades snapped. I'm, kind of shit out of luck.
Yep.
I don't have a knife.
Yep. And there's real world repercussions. Like I'm not even like a hunter per se, but like with that, like how fast they process that animal is their safety.
Right.
And attracting other animals that are going to come. Like there's so many implications that when like these companies ignore the hunter, there's real world collateral damage at a level of like function that isn't taken into account. Like those are God.
Yeah.
Like to think about that. Like it's like if a gun company like handed somebody a 10 mil to go into the backwoods and then it had like replaceable something, like that's your life.
Right.
It's so crazy.
Yeah. And honestly, like that's why like everyone, the number one question we get is like, hey, when's your folder coming out?
Yeah.
When's your folder coming out? Well, it's like we have full plans, we have full designs. We just hired one of the best folding knife designers, one of the best engineers. But Josh doesn't want to put a knife out until he absolutely knows it's fail proof. A lot of people don't know, like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with a folding knife in the field. Temperature affects stuff, obviously water, corrosion, vibrations on your pack, like all this stuff. So if anything gets loose, you lose it. You want to make sure it's be able to repair in the field, but it has to work. And it also has to be, it has to be safe to make sure it doesn't close on you when you're using it, because, we can get into the details of how people use knives, but when you're opening a box, with your pocket knife, there's just a lot of tension towards the back.
Yeah.
But hunters put their finger on the back of the blade, and they're pushing forward.
Yep.
They're actually almost making the action to close it. So, we're developing like a patent pending locking system that's going to block all of that.
Wow. Yeah, dude, that's so nuts. Oh,
yeah.
Well, I love that though. So let's talk about business, because I think that's like a perfect intro into business, because I mean, like, I don't even remember when we did the show, but a lot has changed.
Yes.
Let's just start with like, what has changed? Like, what is life like now? What are we living in? Where are we?
So I'm trying to think of back when we started. So I think back when we had our first podcast, it was Josh, myself, his wife, Jess,
and like 2 other helpers.
Yeah. And I think we had 2 helpers in the shop. And then I think I was just onboarding my like number 2 in the marketing space, Mike. And that's it. I think we just hired our 23rd employee.
Wow.
This week. So, and like I said, it's just, the growth has just been absolutely insane. Yeah. I always just joke, it just feels like Josh and I are driving in a snowstorm with our cruise control pinned, and all we can do is just steer. Like, we can't slow down, we can't go faster. It's just like,
that is the best analogy. Cruise control pinned in a snowstorm. That is what it feels like.
Yeah. And it's just like, we're kind of just reacting to like what's in front of us still. But I think that's what is contributing to our speed, to our growth and stuff like that. Like, we're taking advantage of every single opportunity that is presented to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, this is one of the things we were talking about. I think we said it on the show, right? Like, you love that Montana Knife Company is turning into a gift company, right? And that, like, it's spreading, like it is. But I would challenge that what's happening is that people and customers are now exercising conditioned behaviors that were modeled by you as the company founder. Because like in the very beginning, and even to this point now, it's like you guys built this brand by giving to people, by building relationships with people, by gifting things that mattered and meant something. And then now everybody's catching on and like repeating those behaviors. It's cool to see. And so like, I imagine now though, like, what are some of the things now? Like, obviously we've talked about your time, things like that, going from 5 employees to 23 employees of like a product that is 2.5 years, 3 years old.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
3 years old. That's handmade. That's manufactured here in Montana.
Yep.
That's done here in Montana in the last 3 years, has gone from like idea to 26 employees.
Yeah.
And like the path is like, I don't even like, how do you see all this? Like, how do you feel right now?
I feel great.
Okay, good.
I feel great. But that's also layered with like all the other feelings that I want to feel, stress, anxiety, like all that stuff. Like, I asked for this, I wanted this, like, this is what I want. I'm the one with my foot in the, the gas pedal, or I'm the one that, that actually chose the speed that we're going to pin the cruise control on. So, but right now it's wild because, in my past companies that I've always worked for, is like, I've always come in after the blast off phase.
Yep.
I think some books call it the white water phase. Like, there's the gang phase, and then it gets into the white water phase. I'm always brought in during the white water phase to help, like, just focus on one sector of the business, optimize that, and, try to grow that as much as possible. But right now, as vice president, CMO, wearing a ton of different hats, like, it's just kind of focusing on, the entire business itself, focusing on a year. But, where I've found a lot of, stress management and stuff like this is by just like focusing on like the little micro things, and setting, daily goals, setting weekly goals that affect a monthly goal, that have a determined like drop dead year goal.
Yeah.
Like, as long as I know that I'm taking it in chunks, and like on the creative side, on the marketing side, you almost don't want to like lean process it too much.
Yep.
Because then you get in like this like weird treadmill, and you don't want to be in the weird treadmill, but
not with marketing.
So you want to leave like a system of like, hey, every week's a drop, but like, I don't know what the creative's going to be.
Yep.
Like, let's not think about that until the week of. It will make us be, if our back's against the wall, like what we do Wednesday and when it needs to go live Thursday, it's probably gonna be way more creative than like what we did 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
So just that was kind of like a long-winded answer, but
well, I think it's actually, it leads to a good question. I think what's so cool, like you guys have been a drop company, right?
Mhm.
And even in hearing what you just said, there's a lot of people listening like, fuck, what do you mean I have to do creative for tomorrow today?
Yeah.
Like, and they're like, I don't want that. But like, for me, like that's one of the biggest secrets, right? Is
Right.
like creating containers that you fill that by context, are going to set you up to win, but content you have to fill in
Exactly.
to match the moment and the matter. And so, to know, and I think it's so powerful to know like what you've scaled and where you guys have come from, like that's a lot of fast growth. And you guys are doing this at a very, very big scale, but you're also operating what most people would consider like chaos.
It's pure chaos.
But it's kind of not though,
Yeah.
because if you were to systemize it, right, if you were to systemize the marketing and the drops, then it wouldn't work anymore.
Yes.
Right. And so it's almost like the nature of the beast of the dinner that you ordered.
Right.
Yeah.
I always say like I'm panicking with a purpose.
Oh, that's a good one. Right.
Well, like there's a purpose, but like we got to do it.
And
like,
the feeling is always the same. And no matter how
Mhm.
many times we still forget to remind ourselves like, oh, yep, there it is again. Yep,
Yeah.
there it is again. So like how have like what's changed now, like in that level of growth, right? So like obviously in the very beginning, you're pretty much like foot on the gas pedal doing a lot of behaviors, right? Now you're
Right.
hiring,
Yes.
right? And you're growing massively. And now you're like, okay, cool. I have to pick and choose where I spend bite-sized chunks down.
Yeah.
How do you even go about like thinking about your day differently now though, right? Because like you're having to now go from player on the field to then coach to now skybox, and then some days you're playing in all three positions.
Right.
And so like I just kind of like as you're navigating this, like on the outside in, right? Like I'm like, well, I'm glad I'm friends with him because I preach you up like, ooh, I'm like, you have no idea how good he is. I'm like, he's doing this and this and this and this and this, right? But then on the inside, it's a little bit of a different experience. And I think there's a lot like watching you do this, like it's inspiring. It's motivating. And by osmosis, I'm like, George, get your shit in order. Let's go. Right. Like, all right, let's go. But I know it doesn't always feel like that, but it sounds like you have a really good perspective. And I think the more human we are about it, the more everybody benefits. Cause I feel like there's this trap. Everyone's like, oh, when I make that 3 million or when we hit that scale, it gets easier.
Right.
And I'm like, well, we're kind of in the middle of it. So I kind of love to hear how you see it or how you're working through it or what you,
Yeah. And there's a couple things to unpack there because, the amount of success that we have right now, we never, ever expected ever in our life. And, we're not big about giving up numbers and stuff like this, but the craziest thing is our first year, we told our business insurance guy, like, hey, like we're probably going to do about like $100,000, 120 grand. And we bought insurance for that. And, we ended up ending that year at, like 1.9 million. so it's, I always say this company is way bigger than Josh and I right now.
Are huge.
It is way bigger than anything any of our employees are doing. It's way bigger than anything that's going on. Like this is part of a movement. This is part of a correction in the market. This is a part, and we're just being like, our customers are dictating who's going to lead by example. And we're one of the examples of, hey, things could be done in America. It is really hard, but it's not impossible. And it also can be prosperous. It can be profitable if it is done right and you're doing it with the right intent and all that. Like, so that's like one thing, like I want to make sure everyone understands is that, it is possible to do things in America. And the one thing that a lot of people don't realize too, is like, we can't spend money on advertising.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to ask about this. So go.
Yeah. So Facebook, Instagram, even Google, a lot of our knives, a lot of our products, I mean, all of them to the point where we can't run paid Facebook ads. We can't run paid Instagram ads. We can't run paid, especially on TikTok. We can't do it on Google. And there's ways of working around it where I can set up sub-sites where I only sell my culinary, but our culinary is sold out. So
it's hard.
So there's no conversion based. I mean, running ads just by themselves to sell a knife that's available is hard enough. But then trying to do like 2 back doors and trying to trick the algorithm and all that stuff. So, like we're building this massive company without being able just to start like injecting capital into that. But it's also made us like focus on what actually works, on like what is actually moving the needle. And, this is something you're very big on, but it's like relationships.
Yes.
100% relationships is what built this company. Giving that 51% to everybody.
Yep.
Like just, our company, like we always give credit to like Bert Soren at Sorenex for
Yep.
like helping launch our company, because he's the one who gave Josh confidence, to launch the company along with his wife and stuff like that, but then gave us contacts.
Yep.
And then like what we did with those contacts, and so we've been given all these opportunities. And the thing is like, people always feel like, oh, like they give you an inch, you took a mile, but like, it's almost like, if someone gives you an opportunity, it's your duty to run with it and
Yep.
make the most of it, because you won't get a second opportunity
Nope.
from that person.
Nope.
They want to see you do that. So that's kind of like, that's like one thing we just can't focus enough. And I almost had to rewire my brain for this, because I like to say that I came from like the Tim Ferriss generation,
Yep.
where it's like the 4-hour work week. How can I hack it down to this and do the most like minimal thing? And how can I like interact with the least people as possible and all that stuff? But I think learning those systems, but then adding relationships on top of it.
That's the secret.
That's the secret sauce.
What I tell everybody is that you automate everything that doesn't require human touch point.
Yes.
And then what you're left with is the space where all the magic happens.
Yes.
That's the whole point of like every customer journey model I have. Everything I do, everything is to buy back your time to everything that doesn't require a human touch, so that you can add human touch, because that really is the only way to scale. That is the only way. It's a relationship at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, hearing you say it, and especially like at the lens and hearing the numbers and like what it is, like the faster you get that, the faster everybody wins. Because at the end of the day, it's a human being who's taking out a credit card, right?
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And there's one thing behind that decision. And that credit card also represents as word of mouth referrals and follows and content shares and everything. And that person has to feel safe.
Yes.
That's it. They have to feel seen. They have to feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't give a way which way you slice it, how much money you have. You find me one way to successfully automate your marriage, and then you can convince me that what Brandon and I are talking about is not true.
That's absolutely amazing. No, that's so true. It is absolutely true.
And that's what, like, for me, that's what sucks the oxygen out of all of it. Like, at the end of the day, I am nothing without my customers. I don't
Mm-hmm.
exist. And they owe me nothing.
Yes.
I owe them everything. Just because I put a piece of content in the world doesn't mean they owe me their attention.
Right.
It means I'm throwing a piece of bait out there, and in hope that they pay attention, I'm now indebted to their intention to
Mm-hmm.
make it worthwhile them giving it to me.
Yeah.
And that's how I think about it. And I don't think there's any other way to think about it.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
And lately I've been like obsessed with this idea of like, how can I deliver a product that almost gains, like that it's almost like, it's like you buy it now and it's worth more later.
Yes.
Like almost like buying a
appreciates.
Yeah, appreciates. That's the word I was looking for. So like a product that appreciates value after you buy it.
Yep.
Because like right now we're just like in such like this throwaway economy of like
Yes.
everything.
Yep.
But it's like finally like, no, you have like the people who bought a knife last year or the year before, you bought a first year Montana Knife Company knife. We're not giving up. Like, how insane would they say, like, hey, I got a first year buck knife.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a first year Benchmade
Yep.
when, the owner was just making butterfly knives out of his garage.
Yep.
Like how, like, or like, go back to any other industry, but like to say that you have the first year or something, like obviously not guaranteeing anything, disclaimer, but like those knives are probably going to be worth a lot.
Yeah.
And even stuff, that we're selling today, our third year,
Yeah.
fourth year. And like, and that's why like we're starting to engrave like our first drop models and stuff like that. But like, I'm obsessed with like the value after you make the purchase.
Yep.
Like, how does the knife keep on increasing, in value? But then also, how do we keep on giving back to you, through certain contacts and through like all of our like our guarantees and things like that. But
Yeah.
Not to get down that whole road, but like that's what I'm obsessed with right now.
Well, and you should be like, and everybody listening, you got to understand that the only thing that COVID did was filter out all the bullshit and make the amount of endowment required even greater and deeper in order
Mhm.
for somebody to come in. The hidden benefit is that it's more front work for you, but then it's more longevity for you because once they're in, they don't leave.
Yeah.
But it all requires relationships, no matter which way you slice it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this, but for everybody listening, you're like, well, this is a knife. No, this is no different. The way that I look at my content is that my content is a bridge. And then when I'm done with it, it was only there to help you improve your life everywhere out, and it gets better with time.
Right.
Like every single time, I'm like, nope, no, we're through that. Remember? Nope. Here's the next thing. Here's the next thing. Like it's all, and like even when I teach people, like my job isn't to find my customer, it's to create them.
Mm-hmm.
And creating them means that they have to progress. And like even our backpacks at High Speed Daddy, we lifetime warranty them.
Yeah.
it goes from a diaper bag to then a laptop bag to then a gym bag to then a hunting bag. Like, I use my bags every day,
Right.
all day. And we're like, no, we don't want your money. We want you to use the bag. And if you rip it, we'll fix it. Right. Like,
Yep.
and to the detriment of our business most of the time. But what's more important to us is that, like, that thing's a functional part of your life, and it's a cool reminder, and it's something you stand for and you believe in. It's something that's there, even if there's thousands of them in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And we did the same thing because we bootstrapped it to $10 million.
Yeah.
Right. Like 2 vets, a couple employees, Amazon, Shopify, Craig sewing shit in his garage, finding a manufacturer. Right. Like, and it's crazy to think about, but at the end of the day, like, people are the only thing that matters. And what I think is so cool about you guys is you guys have had people since the beginning, and you've never forgotten about those people. And like, you could look at it, but here's the thing. If I was to look at your growth chart, I could find every correlated relationship directly below it. And then I could find you all of the ones right now that are directly impacting your scale. I think you're blessed that you see that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people need to understand that, like, at the end of the day, it's a human being that's making every decision, every referral, every credit card, every introduction, every contact. Like, and I've been in this game long enough to know that, like, if you nail a hole in a fence and you pull that nail out, they'll remember that hole 12 years later, especially when your name comes up in a conversation.
Right.
Right. And like, it's cool. Like, it's so cool to hear, because I think for so many people, they ask how can this be done? There's not another way. That's not like, you can't do business this way. And like, I always get excited to talk to you and to share your guys' stuff, because I'm like, no, like, you guys are the fucking walking example of, like, no, choose the right reasons, choose the right people for the right reasons, believe in the right things, and fucking stay committed to it.
Yes.
And the moment you do that and you protect that, it's untouchable. It's untouchable. And so I like, it's cool. It's like this fourth wall thing, because I'm friends with you, and I'm like, yeah, but also on the outside, like, I can see it. It's so dope.
I appreciate that. I really do. Because obviously too, like, when you're in it too, you're just like, this is pure chaos.
Well, and you get it like a minute ago, and you're like, this is what I obsess about, right? What you're obsessing about is you're obsessing about the whole point of business in the first place, which is understanding that when somebody buys your product and service, it's never the solution. It's a bridge for them to get there. Right. So like, nobody's buying a Montana knife company because it's a Montana knife. They're buying it because they want to be a better hunter, or have more confidence, or have more boom. What you guys get from the very get-go is you understand that. So what you're obsessing about is teaching them how the other ways this can help them in their life, all the other ways it can benefit in their life, and all the other ways their life can benefit just from being in a relationship with this company.
Right.
And the faster everybody gets that, the faster you win, because the knife itself is a bridge.
Yes.
That bridge is to an island. Everybody in business loses is because all they do is design the bridge, and they forget that there's an island that's needed on the other side. And everybody lives on the island, and they're only on the bridge for a day.
Yes.
And everybody just obsesses about that bridge.
Right.
You obsess about the right things, which is the island.
Yeah.
Because the bridge just needs to be the minimum viable solution to get them in. Whether it's a culinary set, whether it's an MKC t-shirt, whether it's a hat, whether it's a gift, whether it's a sticker, whether it's a blood-in shirt. The moment they have that experience, they're into the movement. And then in the movement is where you obsess about that. And it's never about the knife.
Yeah.
Right? The knife's the totem. The hat's the totem. It's the reminder. Like, I have that one heavyweight MKC hoodie that's in my closet next to the rest of them that I pull out in cold weather, and I put it on, and like, I feel good. It's like a totem. Right. And so I'm sharing all this because, like, I can see it on the outside based on like what we teach and what we focus on. For everybody listening though, like, when you're listening to Brandon talk about this, like, obsessing about these things, they know the knife is there, but I want you to go look at their stuff. They don't ever sell a knife. They sell a lifestyle. They sell an experience. They sell an identity. What they say is like, hey, if this is who you are and this is who you want to be, we are here for you. And if it's not, we are not. But we are welcome. You're welcome to come back at any time, right? And you don't need to buy a knife to be a part of this culture. You don't need to be any of those 100%. Things. And I think that that's the most important part to remember, because if you're selling features and benefits, it's just transactional in nature, and you're not going to like what you get.
Yeah.
If you highlight an experience and you understand what your product or service, whether it's a knife, a course, or anything, is just a bridge, and you focus your life and your marketing and your messaging around the gained experience or the gained perspective or whatever that thing is, that's what allows you in the get-go to even do this in the first place. And I just think a lot of people forget about that, right? And I remind entrepreneurs, because the easiest way to get a 7-figure entrepreneur to break through a plateau is to remind them of what they did for the first 6 months in their business, and then make them delete everything else that got in the way, and then they're off and cooking, right? Because it's the only thing that matters is you sell those first 20 knives, those first 50 knives, and you worked your ass off to sell them, and you're like, oh my God. And you kind of forget what worked, because then it starts coming in and you start adding all this stuff. And eventually you always have to find your way back to, oh, it's always going to be those same core things.
It's so funny you say that, because like that's something Josh and I always say is like, like we'll start expanding our marketing and start expanding here and going after this thing and like going down this avenue, doing this and stuff. But it always comes back to like, remember what used to work? We just used to give knives to our friends.
Yes.
Like that worked every single time for every single drop. We just picked a couple friends, sent them knives, and then just like it just spider webbed
every time.
Yeah, every single time. And but like how can we do that in mass and scale and stuff like that? And but it is the truth. Like what works in those first 6 months is probably still our most tactful things that are working today. There just might be some mechanisms in the background that are amplifying that.
1,000%. What I tell everybody is that no matter what, to get stronger, it's always squat, deadlift, and bench. Mm-hmm. The only difference is your level of mastery and relationship with the movement that allows you to do it.
Yes.
Very differently, with very different loads, very different weights, very different recoveries, and very different sets based on what your needs are. But the movement is always going to be the same.
Right.
And I think it took me 38 years of suffrage to figure that out. And now I get it. I'm like, oh, it's always going to be making content. It's just what it looks like is going to be different. Mm-hmm. It's always going to be about this thing, except the content's going to be a little like, I'm never going to be able to not work. Right? No, I'm just how I work is going to be amplified out very differently.
Yes.
And that's the thing, that when you get it, it's always those basics every single time. And so now, though, with that, knowing that, right? Like knowing that you're kind of in this interesting paradox, right? I think paid media getting removed off the table, which I would love. I'll ask the question based on that. Mm-hmm. Now that paid media has been removed off the table, or it's kind of been a shitty relationship the whole time.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that, and how have you navigated that as a team? Like, you've gotten creative, you've thought of different ways now, but like, how has that impact been there? Like, how do you think through that, right? Because there's a lot of people thinking, listening to this right now, like, I don't run paid media anyways. All I have is owned and earned, right?
Yes.
Owned is what's yours, and earned is giving knives to your friends. So now, as a marketer, as a CMO, how do you see building the business, kind of knowing that you just kind of removed paid media off the table?
Right. So, and what's awesome is that, it kind of leans back onto my, like, I always say, like, I'm a hammer, and email is my nail.
Yep.
Email, SMS, like any way to like directly contact your person. Like, to me, that is the greatest thing. And I think I said this in the original podcast, but I said when MKC was the first business I got to start from the beginning and build that list up organically, and like make sure it's like highly, highly concentrated on people who want to be here.
Yep.
They weren't tricked to be here.
Yep.
They want to be here. And I told, I always tell Josh, I always tell the joke, but like I said, Josh, when we start this company, I don't care if your grandma wants to buy a knife, she has to do it through the website. I want her cookied. Yep. I want her email. I want her SMS. I want all her information. And that has just paid off so dramatically by doing that from day one.
Yep.
Just focusing on bringing people, especially in our space, like, you can be in the hunting space, firearm space, self-defense space, like all these like kind of adjacent categories that, Facebook deems as inappropriate to advertise. Like, make sure you're doubling down on capturing emails, capturing text messages, just ways to, contact your person when you need to contact them.
Which I'm going to ask another question, because need is not when you want to sell them something. So now the second part of the question, you have always been bullish on this, collecting info and doing it, but you also do it with the right intention. So as you do this and you're collecting, and I know how important that is, what are you looking for in collecting them, having them, as somebody who lives in this world? That and the reason I'm saying this is because you sell a physical product that everyone will be like, well, George, how do you build a customer journey without one? I'm like, well, Brandon and I have that figured out, right? But a lot of people look at it like, well, what would you email people? What value could you provide? What would get people to click? And you guys are masters at this. So I would love to kind of hear your thoughts around it.
No, and this is like my favorite thing to talk about too, is because, everyone, so we're blessed that we don't have a single item company. You know what I mean? Like, I always, my biggest fear is like, if I had to work for a company that just sold like one coffee grinder, and then every week I had to find a new way to sell it, and then eventually it just comes into the way of just like, how do you spend a 30% off? Is it buy two, get one free? Is it 30% off? Is it this? Is it that? But, so what I try to do, and what we try to do is like, we call it like, what's the energy for that week? like it's not what's the marketing, because
I
like,
love that.
we never do sales. Everything is just about like what's the energy for that Thursday night. Is it going to be a new knife? So, and right now, like we have a brand new knife dropping. Well, not a brand new knife. We have a knife or a knife restock dropping every Thursday from here until the end of the quarter. And I actually have quarter one and starting to work on quarter two of next year. It's every single Thursday.
Wow.
So that answers my question of like, what am I going to focus on this week?
Mm-hmm.
It's this model, that model, this model. So it's just pushing the benefits of that knife, finding the customer who would want and use that knife. But then like that takes care of like the bulk of my week is like Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
And then like Tuesdays, is usually like our apparel, like merchandise and stuff like that. So we have almost a merchandise drop scheduled every Tuesday from here until we stop doing that.
Yeah.
So, but it's all about creating a company exciting enough to want to be yelling about it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and people talk about, man, it's hard to make content, and like, like this machine's driving so fast right now that there's stuff that I'm leaving off the table.
Yep.
Like I don't have enough spaces to actually post all the content that we have created. If it's between the knife drops, the apparel drops, just like our general knives in stock, everything that Josh is doing on his own and his personal brand between his podcast and like all that stuff, like that's all real estate space. We're super heavy on Instagram. We've posted at least once a day for the past 2.5 years. We've never missed a day of posting a post. And now we're getting up to our almost posting like twice a day, every single day. Some days 3, some days 4. But it's like, and the thing is like, it's because we've created this company so exciting that we want to tell our customers like, hey, this is new. Hey, this is happening. Look at this, this fundraiser we did. Look at this. And it's like, so don't look at it as like marketing as like, hey, how can I sell this product? But like, build a company exciting enough and the company culture exciting enough, and that there's so much new stuff to talk about.
Well, I think what it is that you're not ever having to sell because you're just documenting experiences and showing them.
Yes.
So for everybody listening, like here's the thing, like anytime somebody typically comes to me and they're like, well, I don't know what to say or I don't know what to talk about. I'm like, well, you just don't love your product as much as you want people to love it.
Mm-hmm.
And they never will.
Yeah.
Because if you're not excited to talk about it, like if you're sitting here struggling, then you don't have what you need. Right. Because one of the other things that you said is like, you literally were like, oh, here's my tone for the week. What's my energy art? This knife dropping. Not once did you say anything about the knife itself. You're like, how this knife could help that person.
Mm-hmm.
What's the benefit of this knife in their life? Like you're thinking about the application in their life with the tool as just a tool for that thing.
Right.
And so like, I want everybody to hear this though, because that's what makes it easy to solve the, what do I say? And so why that matters is like, I read all of their emails. I get all of their text messages. And because everything's founded on openness and a part of this community,
mm-hmm.
and you guys are so excited, even when you send emails that are just about buying, they don't feel like I'm buying anything. I'm like, I'm winning with my family right now. Like holy shit, this is in our pantry. Okay. Like, it's not even like, what's so funny about you guys is that like, when I see it, it's almost like, oh my God, I got a gift today. Not like I'm going to whip out my credit card and spend $400 and set up my calendar system and reminders every 15 minutes before 5:59 p.m. so that I can be first in line, logged in, waiting for my Shopify code, ready to go. Like, huh? And so for everybody wondering, like, you should just be on their newsletter irregardless, because I'm not joking. Like, you'll get bit by the itch.
Uh-huh.
But when I break it down as the guy who teaches this, why it matters so much for me is that from the first touch point on, from whether I opted in for your newsletter or whether I bought a knife, I never felt like it was about that thing.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was about us as me and Montana Knife Company choosing to be in a relationship together or a community or a thing. And it always felt like solid ground. So like, even when you guys do a drop, I'm like, fuck, that knife's kind of ugly. Right? Like, not my style.
Mm-hmm.
I still read it. I still go click on the page. And I'm
right.
like, oh, that's dope. I wonder who's going to get that one. And then one of my friends has it 6 months later. I'm like, oh, that was for you. Oh, got it.
Yep.
Right? Like, but it's such an interesting feeling. And it's a weird place for me to be in as like a consumer of it, then also friends with you, and then also like teaching it, because I see it and I feel it, which actually even makes it hard to ask questions about it sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I'm like in it too. Wow, this is weird.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But I wanted to call that out because even when you're answering questions, you're answering many, many answers that give so much credibility to how you're doing this that I want everybody to hear them.
No, I
And
appreciate
so
it.
before that, though, so I love that energy thing, by the way. Like, what's my energy this week?
Yeah.
That's huge. Before you had the drop, so let's say you had one knife drop a month, how would you do that energy for that week?
Right. No, so that's a great question, because like our first year, like we were literally like, hey, let's drop this giant batch of knives, and then we used that money
to do the next
to go buy the next one. So, and it's funny because like if you look at our Shopify, it's like spike, 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 and then like the next year it's like spike, 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 spike,
Yeah,
spike.
the gaps
spike.
just get shorter.
Yeah, just get shorter. And so in between those drops, it was wild. Like Josh and I were just like, okay, we'll just start like a coffee company. We'll do a collab with a brand. So we did a collab with, a coffee company in Missoula. And then we did like a collab with one of my best friends, Casey Bard, Tactic Calories. We did a seasoning blend with him.
Yeah.
We're looking for things just to drop on the website there, Tuesdays and Thursdays and the weeks between and stuff like that. But then like, the first thing Josh and I did, we weren't even taking a paycheck from the company. We're like, we'll just start doing fundraisers. We'll start raising money. And we ended up like, we're 3 months in. Josh, Josh, Brandon, Lily, and Laura Zara, which are, two of the, people, Brandon, Lily, and Laura Zara, were two of the like earliest, like just absolute cheerleaders for our company. We brought them in and, they forged a knife, and we did like a, like almost like a giveaway kind of thing to raise money for, veterans. And, we're like, oh, we'll, probably get a couple, maybe $1,000, $2,000, but within like, 8 hours, we raised close to $10,000, $14,000, something like that, totally. So we were able to bring in 22 veterans, and then that gave us the energy for when we did the veterans event.
Yeah.
So it's just like we're looking, like I'm always looking at that calendar, just making sure there's something exciting happening every week. Like we never take a week off.
What I love, like I 400 episodes, right? I don't think once I've ever heard talked about energy like this, and literally the podcast before this with the Reiki healer, all we talked about was energy. And that'll probably come out a week or two before yours. But this concept of energy, like when you're saying this, like this is landing for me of like where things have been so easy for me in business is because I've been more excited about it than everybody else. And they got half as excited and it changed their life. You literally intentionally as a company from day one, you and Josh behaviorally, like by design, have literally pushed and stretched each other. Be like, every single week, we need to do something excited that we can document, that we can learn from, or that we can grow from. And when you didn't have a product and yet you were still making the product and not getting paid, well, that was your daily function. You protected it and then started doing collabs and then worked in this chunk your goal down to basically every week you're like, I know it somewhere we want to be, but this week I need some energy. Here's where I'm going to bring energy. That is one of the most incredibly profound, simple concepts ever, because I literally had like 20 ideas and I'm like, every single time I do that, I get inspired by something. I bite something, I try something, I do something. And I'm like, not once I've ever thought about like, oh yeah, let's just intentionally do something so fucking fun and exciting this week. I have to document it. Like that's so cool to hear.
I appreciate that. No, I really do. And and when, like when people ask like, hey, what's the secret to MKC, all this stuff, like it's so hard to answer because it's a million things. And, we've already gone over 10 of them. But the one thing, like I'm like, when it comes to setting up our marketing, like I always say, like I'm obsessed with, like, to go back to like a football analogy, is like I'm obsessed with first downs. I am not a Hail Mary marketer. And like, God, I love those guys and I've worked for those guys and I worked with those guys, and they're like, hey, like, just like if that person shared us or this thing happened or this thing, like they're working and they're just throwing Hail Marys. But it's like the dude that is just focused on every week just getting a first down. They're gonna hit the end zone or
every time
or the field goal or whatever football. I'm not a sports guy.
Well, that's right. Well, I'm not either. So I use baseball because I'm like, I heard some baseball coach say base hits win baseball games, not home runs.
And that's it.
And I was like, that. Yeah. Inches, not miles.
But that's also too is like, I think that's, but then there's another layer on top of that. And what that is that, I have an incredible business partner with Josh, is that I'm focused on the first downs every single week. Like I'm focusing on cash flow. I'm focusing on the next knife drop. I'm focusing on this. And that completely allows him to just be throwing Hail Marys like crazy.
Yep.
And that dude is the luckiest man I have ever met in my life. He can, the joke is that Josh can, trip and cow shit in $5 so like I'm always trying to like guard him from like all the busy work and like all that stuff so that he can just sit there and just throw Hail Marys.
Yeah.
He can send a knife to Dana White.
Yep.
And then get a call with Dana White.
I
and then
know.
a post or like, all the like the random things that have happened is just, because like he has that freedom to do
well,
that.
And luck meaning when preparation meets opportunity, and the youngest ever bladesmith who's been crafting knives for 30 years to be able to have the confidence
exactly
in the blade to send to the Dana, which would be the reason he opened it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has a business partner who by design protects his queen bee role and keeps him in it and protects him out of it, while then putting himself in them and ensuring that culturally we create fun and we stretch ourselves intentionally while everybody focuses on customers first, relationships only, and then processes around first downs. Yeah, it's not that complicated, Brandon. The complication is in the discipline to execute it with your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're told and shown by the world that it's not going to work, you tell it to fuck off.
Yes.
And you choose your business partner and your team and your customers anyways. And you're like, well, fuck it. If we're going down together.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that's where it gets complicated.
Yes.
And that's where people lose and they want the easy button.
Right.
Because like the more I learn and the more I listen to you, and I'm very aware, the more it all makes crystal sense to me, like crystal clear. And I'm like, God, thank you for the reminders. Like I need to go start writing emails again. But like it's so powerful, but it also speaks to, I don't remember if we talked about this first show, but like even what you just said, like in 2.5 years, in 3 years, you can literally right now, for anybody listening to this, go back to our other podcast, the first one, which was relatively early with 5-6 employees to now. And you can go look at where daily base hits and this stuff has consistently created what most people would say can't be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you can't control the result, right? You can't control the number, the revenue, but the rest of it is like, you guys remind me a lot of away luggage, where there was this market of luggage where everybody chased to the bottom to have the biggest and at the cheapest price.
Mm-hmm.
And then they all broke. And then it went from that to Rimowa and Toomey, right? And there's no middle ground. And then away was like, we're going to make a $300 suitcase that's better than all of them, that's simple, that we guarantee.
Yes.
And then instantly unicorn,
mm-hmm.
right? And I'm like, but it wasn't instantly unicorn. They had to make a commitment to something that everybody said couldn't be done, that couldn't exist, that wouldn't actually solve a problem. And they're like, we believe it does.
Uh-huh.
And then they had to hold it while everybody said they were fucking crazy.
Right.
And then, boom, boom, boom. And I was like, how'd you do it? I'm like, you were calling me crazy a couple of years ago. You guys protected the crazy and you stood in it. And like what I love, and I think I told you this the first time, is like when you meet Brandon, Josh, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, only just hearing, but you feel that level of integrity and intention and those values. And so like for everybody listening, like I'm saying this too, because I think all too often it's easy to hear somebody like Brandon be like, no, but like, that's how we think. It's like, no, that's how they are. That's how they choose to be. Like every time I bumped into Brandon around town, and we do all the time, either with Rob or in Target or Majestic Arena or somewhere I see him, or we yell at each other. It's always the same. This isn't an answer from like a book. This is a choice that you make every single day, that you and Josh make every single day, that you and the staff make every day, to choose each other and to choose your customers, because the world around you is telling you not to.
Right.
To scale, to sell it out, to know to hear. And I just don't want that to be overlooked, because I think that is such an important part of the story that I just wanted to call that out.
I really do. I appreciate that. And I think that is what is kind of separating our company from everything else. But then also too, it's like, this is Josh's legacy.
Yes.
Like Josh has been working on this for 30 years.
Yeah.
He had the hindsight to purchase Montana Knife Company at the age, the name, trademark it, and the URL at the age of he was like 20. His mom did it for him. So he's been sitting on it for 20 years. So for me, it's like, I have like a level of like respect that I need to like honor this business that's being built, because like our goal from day one is like, we want this to be a household name. We want this to be a legacy brand. We want this to be a Leopold. We want this to be a Sig. We want this to be, a Mossberg.
Yeah.
Like we want that And I think like as we focus on the long game, like it's just letting us be able to say no to all the short game stuff. And everyone right now is all about short game, raising capital, trying to sell the company, like all this stuff. And like when that's just completely off the table,
Yeah.
like you're like the decisions are made for you.
1,000%.
Is that ethically?
Yeah.
Like is that like the most like ethically sound decision for your employees? Like we want our employees for 20 years. We want them to retire with us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
and oh God, fuck yeah, I got goosebumps, bro. God, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. For everybody listening to this right now, rewind it for 2 minutes and listen again. And I want you to listen for what you don't hear. You don't hear, I want to sell a knife for $400. You don't hear, I want to make a blade and not care about anything else. You don't hear, I want to market it and get them to buy. You don't hear, I want to get an upsell. You don't hear, I want to maximize LTV. You don't hear, I want to maximize conversion. You don't hear any of it. And I want you to catch this because Brandon, we speak marketer together very fluently. Brandon is one of the smartest and most incredible marketers, but in this entire podcast and the entire podcast before, I want you to hear this, that you're sitting and listening to the owner, part owner, co-owner, business partner of a multi-million-dollar company that was created from the ground up in 2.5 years. And not once in any conversation that we've ever had, as you run a very large bootstrapped e-commerce company that should not exist, have you and I ever talked about, or you answered a question or done anything about revenue, money, transactions. Now, those frames exist, but you don't put them in that frame until after the person.
Right.
That is one of the reasons you are one of the greatest marketers. But for everybody listening, when you listen to these answers to these questions, if you are asking them in a different way than Brandon is, you're going to get a different answer. You can't ask these questions and try to get the answer and apply them through the lens of transaction. It will not work. And you can't ask them from the lens of transaction and take his answers today and then try to make them work, because they won't. There's a level of like congruency that's required at like a very, very deep scale. And the longer you talk, like every time I ask you a question about business, about numbers, about transactions, you will not go there. Like it's not in your DNA. But that's also the reason that like why everybody looks at you guys and they're like, why does it work all the time? I don't understand why it works. It's really simple. You do it the right way. You put the people first and then you backfill the solution. And so I had to call that out, because I'm going to ask you a question about marketing and like now thinking like where you were, where you are now, protecting Josh's role. Like you live in the same state of the world we live in right now, right? You're not doing paid media. So it's a whole lot of other people, because there's no point half the time right now, right? Saturated market. Your content gets banned and disabled all the time.
Yep.
Lots of people won't even share and talk about your content because it's challenging for their audience, even though they believe the same way, right? You have almost on paper every single ounce of the fight tied against you, like held against you. How now, as like a marketer, are you thinking about navigating? Like, how do you think about marketing? How do you think about this company? Where do you think people should be focusing now? I know earlier we alluded to like the relationships, right? But like now looking forward and hearing the lens of your purview and what you've built, what's important to you and what do you think is really important for everybody to keep focusing on in the near future when it comes to any of this stuff?
Right. Wow. That's a really good question. It's a really hard question to answer too.
Yeah. Or maybe what are you focusing on?
Yeah, I like that one better.
What are you? What I should have said is you.
Yeah, no, and that's great because people do ask that, and what I want to say is like not enough people are listening to the other person's, troubles.
Yes,
like with me, like I could like you just listed out everything that's my problem.
Yeah,
but it's not the same as someone else,
1,000%.
and stuff like that because there's no secrets anymore.
No.
Like that's the thing I love is like, I alluded like the old Tim Ferriss thing, like, early 2000s, it was all about these secrets.
Yeah.
There's things going on in the background you don't know. People are like, well, what's your secret? It's like, everything I do, you see.
Yes.
That's marketing. If you don't see it, I failed.
Yes.
And that's the thing about like, what's the difference between good marketing and great marketing is that, it's everything I'm doing is in the public. There's nothing running in the background of the website that is creating something greater than you're seeing in front of you every single day. So if I had to give people advice, it's, the thing is like focus on your first downs, have your big picture goals set and be like, no, I mean, like literally do everything possible to hit this goal on December 31st.
Mhm.
And then just take it in bites, take it by month, and then take it by week, and then take it by day.
Mm-hmm.
I like, you were saying, like, I don't talk about numbers, but like they're always there,
Yeah.
but they're benchmarks.
Yes.
They're absolute benchmarks. They're litmus tests. They're benchmarks or things like that. But the biggest thing is like what I'm focusing on in the next year is just all eyes on the brand.
Yep.
So now I have to reverse engineer, like, how can I get people outside of Instagram? How can I get people outside of our email list, text message, out of our friends to see the brand?
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's my biggest thing that I'm focused on. And I'm not going to lie to you, I really don't have an answer.
Oh, I do. Oh, I have about 10. 3 of them just popped in your culinary collection instantly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I have a lot.
I like
we'll
it.
talk about that later. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was like, oh, I do. But I love that. Yeah. Actually, I love that. So thinking about like eyeballs, right? And this is such a beautiful example because everyone's like, how do you control eyeballs? I'm like, oh, that's the beauty of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you just said, like, I look at the numbers and the data like barometers. They give me a read.
Mm-hmm.
But like what I find is so funny is that people make these numbers of like, I need a 10% conversion rate or I fail. And I'm like, bro, you just got a 1.9 and you never had 1 before. Let's go to 2 and then 2.1 and then 2.2. And if we accidentally hit 4 on the way, like let's celebrate every ounce of it. But you don't gain miles, you gain inches over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And I love like even like everything you say like goes right back to that. It's so powerful that I just forgot my train of thought. But when you think about the eyeballs thing, so with that, like what are some of the ideas that you have? Like how would you reverse engineer that?
So I guess, good way, like almost how like we chunk down numbers is like my next year is like, I want to just like, how can I make everybody in Montana know our name?
Yeah.
Let's start with Montana.
Yep.
And then let's go, because we are very big, like we're, an international brand, we sell internationally and we are very big nationally, but like I can tell you, not everyone in Montana knows our name.
Oh, because I was at PBR the other night. I only saw one MKC hat.
Yeah.
And I normally see more around or more t-shirts. I didn't see as many.
Right. So
we got to step it up the game. We got Brash, but we don't have the PBR when they're in town.
Yep. So I got to focus on that. So it's just like, and the goal is like, okay, so if I want Montana, then what does that mean? Then I need to focus on every major city.
Yep.
And then I need to start focusing on the rural areas and stuff like that. And then like, that's going to influence how I'm going to market because those are going to be completely different things. We might be going to print mail. We might be going to local newspaper ads. We might be doing this or just being in there.
Well, what I love too is like with all those ideas too, and I think for everybody listening is like when chunking it down, you're not chunking it down to find all the answers. You're chunking it down to find the ingredients to pick which ones you want. Because like when you're like, oh, we'll pick what city, we'll pick what there, then like it's like, oh, well, what are we going to do there? And who are we going to talk to? And you might chunk down to 12 cities and you might look at it all and be like, oh, there's only 2 that make sense. And then you pick those 2 and you chunk those down.
Yes.
Right? Fair?
No, that's 100% fair. And it reminds me of like one of my favorite quotes is, I'm going to butcher it now, I'm going to say it, but it's like, I don't know where I'm going, but I know exactly how to get there.
Yes.
And it's like just understanding and being being self-aware and being, having confidence in yourself to actually know that the process of coming up with the answer, and I think that's what, people who are not in marketing or people who don't, who are used to just, doing more like the lean system and stuff like that they're very uncomfortable with. Like, I love being in that uncomfortable moment of not knowing the next step.
Yep.
But I know the next step will always present itself if I keep looking.
Yep.
It's kind of, when I talk about this and when I'm talking with other like hunting marketers, it's like tracking an elk.
Yep.
Like, so you made the shot, the elk is off somewhere else. It is now we just need to find it. And the only way to find it is to find clues. Just keep looking for clues, keep looking for clues, keep looking for clues. And I hate, it sucks because like those answers aren't very like, go out and do this right now.
No.
You're going to make X.
Nope.
It's like, but like, that's a difference between good marketing and great marketing.
Lack of better terms, that's the actual secret.
Yeah.
Because if it's go out and do X to get Y, that's not the real result you're going to get. You're going to be met with the same ceiling again or the same challenge. That's the paradox of it all, right? Like the best coaching is the one that gives you no answer except a path to help you find yours.
Yes.
Right? Like that's it. And even in and what you say. Like, I think in entrepreneurship, one of the most not talked about things at all is not even like people are out there asking questions about like what to think. And I'm like, you should just be looking at like how to think differently.
Yes.
Like that's really where the game is won. It's like when you can create a crack in your door of thinking, like that's what all great marketing is, right? In my opinion, the difference between bad marketing and good marketing is bad marketing is convergent thinking, which is linear, and good marketing is divergent thinking, which is systems.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like just from the baseline, if you think that anybody's going to go A, B, C, you've already fucking lost the game.
Right.
That's not how humanity works, right? And so I think it's just for everybody listening to this, and I'll even say this again on the episode, like even listening to this, it's about picking up one thing, like one thing you can think about differently, one way you can think about that differently, one way you can think about that differently, or maybe do it differently as well. But I'd say the greatest marketers in the world would agree that what we do is we look at experience and tools that exist in our purview. And then we're like, we've made a recipe like this before. Let's throw these ones together and see if this works.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it works, great. If it works, kind of, we make an adjustment to an ingredient until we master the dish.
Yes.
And that's, I think, the hard part is like people want a 1 + 1 = 2. But what you talked about is that everybody's a little bit different. Everybody's situation's different. But the context of it all is always the same. It's like the context of a monogamous relationship. You communicate, you're honest, you're present. Great. How you do that is different for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Marketing is like, I know who I want to help and how I want to help them. And my product's just a bridge. The how you do that, if anybody's giving you that answer, there's a very, very good chance it's not going to work.
Right.
And it will lead to frustration until you find a lot of what you've talked about today, which is like who you are. Who do we want to be? Who do we want to become? Like, what's our vision different than the business? Like, what do we stand for? What do we want to create? Because then at least where you know where you are, you can pick the first bite. And I'm sure you've noticed this and would attest this, but then it's really cool to think that you know where you want to go. And then you take the first 3 bites and then the meal looks completely different when you pick up to go down for the next bite.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, got it.
Right.
Right. And I think the more that we talk about this, because I love like, but every time I see you, every time we talk to you, like you're creating something, you're building something, you're literally first downing yourself everywhere. And then even in the areas like, and just so you guys know, he runs this company, but his camera's in his truck all the time. And he's still taking photos every day. Like he literally was in my office looking at a lay flat photo, being in like the first downs. Now you're the CMO of the company, the vice president of the company of 26 employees. But one of the things that you talked about on the first podcast was like create every day.
Yeah.
I love that we're fast forwarding in the future. Your business is in a drastically different place, but that is a behavior that you still keep
doing
every single day.
Yeah. So look, and I'm like I said, it's something I forget a little bit, but it's just because it's just nature right now to like, because they're like, right now, like we can't outspend, like we can't out people.
Nope.
So now it's just like, okay, we can just outwork and just be more creative.
Dude, I know. I'm excited for when we get to do chapter 3.
Yeah.
And then like, I'm just going to hit because we're going to hit chapter 3 soon. Cause I'm going to plan to go see Josh and get Josh's perspective and like hearing about the bladesmith stuff, that whole other story is going to be so great to hear. But it's exciting, man. Like it's so incredible. You guys, I don't even have to ask. Like, I'll give it. Like you guys are fucking incredible. Like even like being here and being neighbors for now, but like knowing you personally, but even before that, like existing as a company, like I remember the fundraising. I remember all that stuff. Like you guys are literally like walking the walk, and it's just like an honor. That's the only word that like really comes up is like, we've both lived in this world of business and marketing for a long time. And it's beautiful to see when things are done the right way for the right reasons and like fully aligned. And it's just something to be, it's just beautiful. I just appreciate it, man.
I appreciate that. No, I mean, that's like everything you're saying, everything you're complimenting is what we want to hear, not from like a praise, but like, that's why we built this company.
Yeah. And like, I have to, like, I can only give kudos, right? It's not like, oh yeah, no, like, it's like, no, you deserve every ounce of this, like, and more and more and more. And then even the wisdom you share and the knowledge and like how humble you are about how good you are, it drives me nuts for all the right reasons. And I was like, I want everybody listening to this, like I'm over here asking, I'm like, Brandon, how are you doing this? Like, oh my God, do you think like that? And he's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking. No, I take notes when I obsess about everything they do. I'm like, oh, nope, he did that. Oh, that was smart, dude. That was really good. I forgot about that. So I will say this: get involved with Montana Knife Company any way that you can, and I mean their website, their social. Just be a part of it. If you want to see nothing more than an example of what's possible when you know yourself and you're aligned and how to treat customers, I mean, the cult-like following, the endowment, the community, like it is one of the most beautiful things. Like I feel like you guys could open up Instagram and be like, I need 500 of you in this random place in the middle of nowhere to help people, and they would all show up.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible. And so like forever, however, whenever, any way I ever can, I will always be in the corner of you guys, no matter what. And for everybody listening, like you have to. You have to. And so I don't even know where to send them besides everywhere. Like just go get MKC everything, go to the website, go to the Instagram, go tell Facebook to pound sand.
Yeah.
You dumbasses. I'm like, oh my God. I don't, it's crazy, man. I'm excited. And I'm so excited for you and like even this little chapter marker in of like this moment. And now you're moving, right? Going to be closer into the lion's den.
Exactly. Yeah. Cause I've been working remote for the past, for MKC for 2.5 years, but I'm still driving down there like once a week and stuff. But now like we're getting to the point where we're hiring more marketing staff, all this stuff. It just makes sense to be in-house right there all the time. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic too.
I'm excited for a big whiteboard so I can map out all those ideas. That's all I want to do. I need sticky notes, a whiteboard, and eyeballs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here's how you get eyeballs. Let's do it. I love it. Which, by the way, I forgot about the culinary set. I forgot you guys did that.
Yeah.
You told me about that. I was really excited. How'd that go?
It went really, really well. I mean, honestly, it was, I think it's going to be a larger piece of our company than we ever expected.
Oh yeah. I could have told you that.
Yeah. So it makes sense too, because like, obviously like, there's only like I think 2 or 3% of all of America hunts, but everybody has a culinary set in their kitchen. So, but now its goal is like the same thing we did with the hunting knives, but it's like, how do we educate the person on what a really good, kitchen set is these days, and, appreciating the American made and appreciating what comes after that and all that stuff. So it's going to be a long road. But the culinary knives are way harder to make.
Yeah.
They're big knives and we're making them the same quality as our little 5-inch knife. So there's a lot of like scaling and manufacturing stuff going on in the background that like just blows my mind that we're doing to try to ramp up the scale and all that. So
I love it. I love it, man. Well, I think we're going to put a bow on this one because I got to save some round 2-ish, round 3-ish. But yeah, so I mean, everywhere, Montana Knife Company, Instagram. What's your Instagram, your personal?
Yeah, it's just my name now. So it's just Brandon Horoho.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Brandon Horoho. Check it out. And I mean it. And I would invite everybody to take this purview of like, look at what they do both from a consumer, but then look at what they do through the lens of like this conversation in the previous episode. Because one of the things I want to reiterate, and I love that you say this, is like, there are no secrets anymore. Like and one of the greatest lines you ever said is, how do you describe marketing? Like, you can see everything that I'm doing that's working. That's great marketing.
Yeah.
It's that it's working and you don't know it's working and you're enjoying the process. Like, that's great marketing, which just sucks the oxygen out of like, I don't know how to market. Yes, you do. Yeah. You just gotta get excited about it, get it to work, and get it out there. So, Bade, it's an honor, man. Like, I love you guys to pieces. Thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for being back.
Thank you, man. Seriously,
dude. It's a pleasure. For everybody listening, like, you're not going to get rid of them. They're on my hunting rig. They're on my hiking rig. Like, you see them everywhere. They're on my backpack. I'll be talking about it forever. But make sure you check out Montana Knife and at least give them some support and kudos because of what they've done for communities. I've watched them give back. I've watched them do all that. And I just want us to give our light and support people that are doing great things. So go give them your love, give them thank you. And we'll do it again soon, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So for everybody listening, I'm about to pee my pants and get a UTI. So we're going to end the show. You'll either see us in the next episode, catch me in your earballs, but either way, we're out.